Squares. No, cubes was my first thought when I blinked into consciousness. Cubes. The whole world around me. From the sun in the sky to the ground I stood on, everything was made of perfect blocks. Something was familiar about this world, but I couldn't quite place it. To my left and right was a line dividing two environments, a lush forest to the north and a scorching desert to the south. The change wasn't instant, it was more gradual. Grass clumps dotted the start of the desert, and sand blocks flecked the beginning of the grass. The transition from no trees to trees was also progressive, with fewer trees closer to the desert. I paused at a nearby tree and traced my fingers across the invisible, sharp-edged hills and valleys of the bark. I noticed my arm and fingers were rectangular as well. "What am I?" a voice asked. The voice was my own, but I only knew because of the vibrations in my throat. How do I not recognize my own voice? I wondered. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't remember any details from my own life. What was my family like? My friends, if I had any? All that soul-searching was distracting me. I needed to gather resources, and if this world was as familiar as I thought, the first step was to punch a tree. My common sense warned against it, but I pulled my fists back anyway. New world, new rules. Pixelated cracks appeared in the log as I punched it repeatedly. After a few seconds, it broke and dropped a miniature version of itself. As I reached toward it, it jumped into my hand a few inches away. I continued punching logs, even though I wasn't sure what to do with them. They became thinner as they stacked, but I soon discovered they didn't stack forever, only up to 64. Looking around myself for somewhere to store them, I noticed a tool belt with 8 slots. Each perfectly fit a stack of logs. I wonder if there's anything else. As I reached behind myself to feel for more slots, my hand found a backpack instead. Inside was a total of 27 cube slots stacked 3 long, 3 deep, and 3 wide. This was much more relieving. I wouldn't run out of storage space for a long time. Then something else crossed my mind. Crafting. Until this point, I hadn't even considered making materials into tools. How come I hadn't thought of it before? I prepared to use both hands, but noticed something unusual. When all my fingers were together, a grid appeared in my left palm. Suddenly, something dropped into my pocket, an actual pocket, that I hadn't noticed before. It was a green book. I pulled it out, and the only thing in it was an image of a 2x2 grid with a log in it. An arrow pointed from the grid to another object. Using the grid in my left hand, I followed the recipe. Above my hand, a ghost image of wooden planks appeared, so I grabbed it, and 4 planks materialized in my hand. I didn't know what I was thinking, but I checked the book again. It was ridiculous. Surely there couldn't be anything new since the last time. But there were 2 new recipes, sticks, and a crafting table. The crafting table sounded important, so I arranged the 4 planks I had into the grid. The new block had a 3x3 grid, opening a whole new variety of possibilities: slabs, stairs, doors, trapdoors, chests, and even tools. Suddenly, I recognized the patterns in this world, gathering resources to create tools, then using tools to gather better resources. Minecraft, I laughed. I get it now. The blocks, the simplified physics, this world must be a game. Even though I then realized that I knew I shouldn't be careless. To my limited knowledge, this world didn't offer second chances. Before I could dwell on that further, the sun had already begun to set. If this world were a game, that could only mean the days were shorter here. I crafted the rest of my logs into planks, giving me almost 4 stacks. Time was running out, so I didn't waste it making my house fancy. I built a cube, crafted 3 doors, the crafting table wouldn't let me make only 1, and closed myself in. Then I had a facepalm moment. Why am I in such a rush? I thought to myself. For all I know, nighttime is perfectly safe. A creature groaned from outside. That sound was recognizable anywhere. It was a zombie. But those weren't the only monsters I had to worry about. I heard sounds of bones clacking together and the occasional scuttling of a spider's 8 legs. Quiet footsteps came from something else. I couldn't quite tell what it was. Through the 4-slot window carved into the door, I saw the monsters. Zombies, green and roaming around with their arms outstretched. The clacking of bones came from living skeletons, and the spiders, they were ginormous. I'd heard of large spiders in my old world, ones that could be as big as a grown man's hand, but never this huge. I just need to sleep, I said as I lay on the grass floor. Things will be better in the morning. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't sleep. Maybe I needed a special block to sleep on, or possibly I couldn't sleep at all. Sneaking over to the crafting table, I made something called a pickaxe. I started digging in a 3x3 spiral downward. I hadn't even thought about what was below my feet until now. I had to find something, even if it was simply a potential source of light. After several diagonal blocks of dirt, I reached a hard, gray layer. Stone Age. The first thing I hit looked like all the stone around it, except for black speckles. After breaking it with my pickaxe and picking up the black, lumpy item it dropped, I knew it could only be one thing: coal. Before immediately jumping back up to my crafting table, I decided to see what I could craft with my left hand. This turned out to be a huge time saver. Crafting sticks and placing lumps of coal on top of them produced torches. The torch lit as soon as I placed it on the wall, illuminating the stairway. Using that light, I mined the rest of the coal and brought it back to the surface. The moon was at its peak, so I pulled out my recipe book to see what I could make with the now cobbled stone. Some recipes were in the same formation as wood recipes, crafting stairs and slabs. Combining it with sticks made tools. Most useful of all was a furnace, crafted with 8 cobblestone blocks in a square outline. The bottom slot of the furnace allowed coal and most wooden items, but anything I put in the top slot wouldn't cook. I arranged a few cobblestone blocks and sticks into a pickaxe formation. I grabbed it out of the air with practiced ease and jumped back into my mining operation. Down the spiral staircase, I hit my head on the edge of every single block. It didn't hurt, but it was annoying enough to fix. The next block I broke opened into a cave with very little light, interrupting my plans to keep digging in a spiral. I couldn't see where the light was coming from, so I jumped down to place a torch and almost broke my legs. Regret washed over me as the light washed over the cave walls. There were monsters everywhere. I'm still not sure what happened right after that. Instinctively, I started jumping, placing blocks below my feet. Suddenly, I was getting higher rapidly. I had closed off the cave, but I still felt a need to get back to the surface to make sure they couldn't follow me. As I arrived back in my cube house, I noticed the sun was rising and the monsters were burning. The spiders weren't, but they hadn't done anything threatening, not yet. The undead creatures caught fire as soon as the sun poked out from behind the horizon. They all disappeared into puffs of smoke, not what I expected. I tried to ignore the smell of rotten flesh as I walked outside. I basked in the sun's rays, but it wasn't long until I heard something creep up behind me. It started to hiss, but I couldn't react fast enough. An ear-splitting explosion filled the air, and my world faded to black.